Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Jerich Show. In this week's action-packed episode, we talk about old people and AOL. We discuss cash apps, and we try to sympathize with investors that are losing money. All this and a special guest.
Welcome to the Jerich Show, featuring your hosts, Javvad Malik and Erich Krohn. Timely topics, poorly presented.
So let's get the introductions out the way. As always, back from last week's hiatus when we had a fantastic episode without you. But how are you doing, Eric? What did the doctor say? How long do you have to live?
I'm doing okay. We're just dealing with, got in a car wreck, neck hurts. Gonna keip dealing with it.
Interesting, good. And our other special guest this week is the James McQuiggan. James is a long-term friend of ours and a colleague as well. So how you doing, James, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I think I was one of the first subscribers when you guys started all of this. So glad to be here. Only took 40 shows to get joined on. So, but hey, it's another day in paradise and excited to be here.
That's awesome. I think we're up to 4 subscribers now, so you're in the first 25%.
Woohoo! Awesome.
So people, when you're on YouTube and you see a video and there's that one person at the bottom always saying, first, you just met him. That's him. That's the physical manifestation of it.
Awesome.
Cool. So don't forget to subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, The Jerich Show, and on our podcast, Jerich Show, thejerichshow.podbean.com, and follow us on all the social media sites. So anyway, let's jump straight into it. James, this is a story you can probably relate to more closely than Eric or I. It's elder fraud. What's this all about? The FBI put out a warning.
Is that because I'm older than you guys and I'm closer to retirement than both of you? Yeah. Okay. So elder fraud is always is a big concern out there because a lot of people that are the digital immigrants, the old folks, the baby boomers and our parents and so forth, they are a lot more trusting online than we'd like them to be. And there's a lot of different scams that are out there as we're seeing here. You got the romance scams, the tech support one. I've had family members fall for that, certain operating system calls up and goes, "Hi, you got a virus. Here, we're going to help you fix it." Yeah, they don't do that. One of the nastier ones is these funeral scams where they'll scan the obituaries in your area or whatever area they're in, and then they go to the funeral and they meet the widow and go, "Hi, just want to let you know that your significant other owes a debt of money to us," and they make it look official, and lo and behold, they end up paying it. I think the term I like to use is lowlife for that. But yeah, a lot of different scams that are out there. And again, just like the adults in the world, it comes down to awareness, making sure people are aware of the different scams and showing them what to look out for.
So Javvad, if you remember, long time ago, in one of our earlier episodes, we did a "how low can they go" sort of theme, right? And we talked about how some of these attackers will scan obituaries and then do fraud against like Medicare, Medicaid, things like that. And this is just another example of how low will they go. I mean, to show up at the funeral and be like, "Oh, they owe us money." That's just that's taking it to a new level. What do you think?
It is. It's so, and you got in one high look at how brazen they are where they turn up in person. A lot of the fraud we talk about is online. When the coronavirus started to spread and there was the initial spate of deaths, there was I think in that episode we spoke about how some nurses had died and people were taking their public profile pictures and setting up a GoFundMe or something similar. Say we're trying to raise funds for their funeral. This is the person. They were like a caring, giving member of the community, and people obviously they feel for these people who've given the ultimate sacrifice in the service of others. And this is a really really low one. I mean, my advice to my parents and their friends and what have you is just be rude. If anyone phones up, don't try to be polite or engage in conversation. Just hang up the phone.
Yep.
You're going to feel like rude, but they're not really going to call back or just say go away and hang up the phone. The problem is that the more oxygen you give them, the more they have an opportunity to get into your mind and try to influence you.
That's tough for some of the older generation because they were kind of raised on being polite, right, and having that interaction and having a little bit more concern about what others may think of them and all that. I mean, here we are at our age, and things have changed quite a bit, probably thanks to social media. We can argue that however we want, but this is a real problem with the older people that don't want to be seen as rude and don't want to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, we used to get excited when the phone would ring. It's like, oh, who's calling us? Who's calling us? And have to go answer the phone. And nowadays, the phone rings, and I look at the caller ID, and I go, yep, nope, not answering it. But yeah, I think with a lot of the life experience people, as I like to call them, seniors is almost a little too cruel, but the life experience, it's kind of that norm that they're either have to settle into, become aware of it, or, they end up falling for these scams, which is unfortunate.
I think the other factor here is loneliness, especially during this pandemic when people have been isolating a lot. You get a phone call and someone's talking to you, you're happy to talk to them for a while, and that happens. But linked to this story is how many of you actually used to receive AOL CDs or still do maybe?
Yeah, I got to wonder, do they even actually send those out anymore? I can only say no, I'm sure they don't. But back in the day, yeah, they used to send these things out and get people to sign up for free internet or cheap internet. And so what's interesting is this is so many years ago, right? And yet AOL is still around. It's no longer the ISP it used to be. It's more of an advertising campaign or an advertising organization these days. So it shifted what it did, but it's held on to a lot of those people that was their first and only email account. Remember the whole "you've got mail," right? That came from AOL. Yet here they are, phishing people on AOL.
Yeah, I've still got family members that are using it. It's their one email address, and AOL is, like you said, it's no longer that internet service provider. It's now email and a cheesy platform. But yeah, the phishing email, your account's closing. We see that with banks and other environments. It's that lure of fear that you're going to lose your account and your access to email and your connection to the outside world. And when you've got all those life experience people, that's their only connection. So yeah, I can see it freaking them out, but so we don't exactly have awareness programs for the seniors.
So Javvad, I know that technologically wise, you're challenged by operating a toaster. Do you have an AOL account or something other than that?
I don't have an AOL account. No, I never got sucked. I was never rich enough to afford the £10 or £20 a month that they wanted for subscription. So that's why I didn't do that. I used to have a Hotmail account back in the day. I think that was the first free email service that I signed up for. But I don't have that account anymore, which is for the best, I think.
Well, it is interesting because these people who have these accounts, although they probably even have a free account through their ISP or they can get Gmail or whatever, they're intimidated by the idea of having to change to a new account and being unfamiliar with the stuff that's going on there. So they've held on to this legacy thing for so long. And now the attackers, again, are targeting that. And what's interesting is the attackers are probably going to have a real good idea of the demographic they're targeting when they're doing this. So they can make it even more effective by using those elder scam sorts of things we just talked about with this demographic.
Yeah. So at its peak, let's take a bit of a deep dive into AOL. At its peak in 2000, they had around 23 million subscribers across the US, and most of them paid about $20 per month for dial-up and internet, and because Gmail and stuff wasn't around back then, or there weren't many free services out there for internet and what have you. It's hard to say how many subscribers they have now. I think the most up-to-date annual report that AOL filed, which broke out their email services, was 2014. But even in 2014, they reported 600 million in revenue from their email services. Wow. And they predicted that that's going to decline by 50 million a year. So that was, 7 years ago. So they're still probably making about, what is that, 300 million, 200 million? It's still a significant amount, I think. It's, so how many people are there that don't realize they're paying actual money for this service? If you want to talk about scams, let's get people off these services.
You didn't tell me there was going to be math involved today.
Yeah, I know. Neither did I tell myself. Let's move swiftly on, yeah?
Yep.
So speaking of maths and cash, I suppose is
numbers.
So it's like maths. That's me making my links between the
awesome
stories.
Awesome segue.
I know. You're welcome. You can't pay for this kind of service. See, if AOL came to you and said, we're going to give you an internet show, just say no.
I think it's that we can't charge for this kind of service, Javvad. That's the difference, okay? So anyways, on this story, right? This is the Cash App story, right?
Yeah.
So, Cash App is another one of these money sharing apps that have become very popular, right? There's Venmo, there's PayPal, there's all of those sorts of things. And Cash App, I know, has become more and more popular. My wife has used it. We've used it with, people just making purchases, et cetera, et cetera. And there's some things about it that are different, but it's very convenient for people to be able to go, you know what, I owe you $20. You're standing there next to him and you go, boom, and you send them the money. Or, you're splitting a meal or something like that. And who carries cash anymore? So boom, you Cash App them a few bucks, right? So these are becoming very, very popular and they're super convenient. Well, of course, anytime something becomes popular, it becomes a target. So now what we're seeing here is we're seeing phishing kits that are focusing on the Cash App side of things. And as soon as these became available in the phishing kit, boom, they started hitting out in the real world.
I'll tell you who's using cash: seniors.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know whether contactless payment is a big thing over there in the US. Do you use contactless cards or phones for payment?
It's slowly taking off. COVID helped with it.
Right. So over here,
a lot more of it.
So speaking from the future, we've been using contactless payments here in the UK for a long time. And you can pair your card to your phone as well. So it's just like literally you go up to the till, you tap on the machine. And initially the limits were at £30 per transaction. During COVID, they increased that to about £50 or £60. And just a few days ago, there was a report that they're going to increase it to £100. Oh, wow. And it is very convenient because you can use your watch, you can use your phone, you can, or your card or what have you. It's really quick and convenient. But I was listening to this marketing psychologist, and he said actually one of the big drivers behind it is that when you use contactless payments, people can spend up to 30% more with contactless than they do with cash or when they have to put in their PIN, because you're removing the friction or the barrier, and it doesn't feel it's similar to why casinos use chips instead of like actual cash on the table, because the chip doesn't feel like cash.
It's easier to use. Exactly. Yeah.
It's a lot harder to dig into your wallet, pull out money, and see it reduced by a tangible amount that we can get our brains around and go, ooh, maybe I don't want to spend that much, send this back or whatever. And so even doing like debit payments and things like that, I'm sure people tend to spend a little bit more, even just putting it through debit cards. But now with the touchless and that's really makes it easy. And I do think it's funny you said, welcome to the future. Cause I mean, it's been years since I've been to London. Right. But when I was there, of course, you guys were using chip cards, chip and pin long before we were over here. And here in the States, we even kind of put our toes in the water a little bit with a chip and signature. We didn't even do chip and pin, right? And it was interesting when I was over there because there were cards that my company card, I couldn't buy tickets for the tube because my card did not have a chip on it.
Right.
It was an interesting time going over there. So you're right. You're in the future. We look forward to your prophecies and such.
That's why when you go to the supermarket, they've got all the candy there, right there in the aisle, and all the magazines. It's because you've got your children with you, and they're begging for that chocolate bar, and so you throw it on there, and it's like, all right, fine. They get you there at the aisles.
If you had ever been to a Fry's Electronics, which is now closed down, right? They ran you through basically like an IKEA gerbil maze of candy and all kinds of like under $5 garbage as you waited your turn to hit one of the registers. It was brilliant.
But also you had USB cables and mini chargers and just other little stuff.
That's what I'm saying. All the inexpensive stuff
you may not need.
Yeah, before you know it, you're like having to go get a cart to come back to get through the stupid line to get to the cashier. I mean, it was crazy, and it's very effective, right?
You know what? It is very effective, and it's not all garbage, because you took me to a Fry's when we were in Dallas, I believe. I bought a GoPro from there, and we were in the queue, and I saw one of those non-oil, non-stick frying pan, pancake maker sort of thing. It's like, it opens up and it closes, and you just flip it around. And I use that so much, about 3 times a week or 4 times a week. Me and my wife, we use it. It's great. It's small, so it's a shame that Fry's is closing down.
But it does work. I mean, it really, really does. And I think if you remember, Toys R Us used to kind of run you through a gauntlet to get to the checkout too. And the kids, you're having to peel them off of the shelving units and stuff. And I mean, it is a brilliant marketing technique. And if they combine that with this being easier to spend, you just don't feel it until you go home and you look at your account and you go, oh, hey, what happened there? Yeah. So
what we have now also is in some of the big supermarkets where you go, you get your trolley or your cart, sorry, and you pick up a handheld scanner, which you've got your pre-registered thing, your account with them. So as you walk through, you scan items and you put it in your trolley, and then you just walk out the store, and it deducts it from your account automatically. So it's like the horrible buy with one click button that you see online. It's just impulse purchase. Anyway, speaking of impulses, BEC scammers are targeting investors for massive payout. I'm trying to keep a straight face because this is bad. We don't like people scamming or robbing anyone, even if they are investors. But
well, I learned a lot when I actually read this story, because as one of the poors, I had no idea how this kind of stuff works in the ritzy world of investments, right? So this has to do with a very targeted attack against investors, and probably specifically investment organizations, people that are doing a lot of investments, quite a bit, and large amounts of money. And as a matter of fact, it nets about 10 times what the typical BEC attack does. So James, why don't you take a moment and tell us about these new types of attacks that we have here?
So with the business email compromise, or BEC, they're targeting these businesses to collect large amounts of money a lot quicker than they would, or a lot more sophisticated than they normally would through another type of phishing attack. The BEC, they take their time, they get inside the environments and they want to be able to get a large payout. Sometimes they might get, on other phishing or spear phishing or other type of attack campaigns, they might be getting a couple $1,000s, a couple $100, maybe hit a jackpot and get over 10,000. But these BEC scammers, they are in for the long haul. They're collecting 50 to 100 millions of dollars. But this particular one is really interesting because they're using what they call their capital call sheet. And so it's demanding payment for a previous investment, but it's actually a fake investment. And either the people that are working at the investment companies, they're getting it and then they're just processing it without any type of additional verification, or they've set something up. But when I was looking through it, I just thought it was real interesting in regards to they're using the fake websites, and the people aren't that are processing this weren't really catching it. And these guys are walking away with 800 grand plus in a single transaction. So, the time and effort to put this into play could be a week, maybe a couple weeks, could be less. And they're netting $800,000 as they scam this money out of these different investment groups. And once the money's been moved, they're quickly, the cyber criminals are quickly moving it to different banks. They've got their money mules. They've got their own withdrawal transactions they've got going on to move the money around and make it a lot harder for them to get it. So they're getting more sophisticated. They're kind of upping the game a bit, and they're hitting folks that aren't on the bleeding edge of security awareness and are missing the boat on this one.
So what's interesting on this is it's called a capital call. So basically investors say, I am putting money into this. I'm committing to putting money into this investment, although it may not be ready yet. So what they can do is they can hold on to their actual cash and use it to make money on their own. And then this call comes in, this capital call comes in that says, okay, now you take the money that you earmarked for this, you move it to us ASAP for this investment. And what was interesting in what I saw here is the way they made these forms out, they filled them out in such a way that it looked like they had previously invested money already. So it may be like amount invested already, 1.2 million. Call is 960,000. And what they were ending up doing is they were saying things like, if you don't have us this money by this time, your initial money is forfeit. So what that's doing, it's adding that sense of urgency. And then if they start looking through the books and they go, man, I can't find this, but it shows right here, you got 1.2 million at stake. This may cause people to go, okay, we need to get that out there, or we're going to lose this 1.2. So it's a very interesting way to do that, and some of the subtleties that they used in these calls. Absolutely.
And the other thing, I was speaking to my cousin's husband the other day, and he used to work for an investment sort of company back in the 90s. And he goes, they had the investment arm and they had the trading arm. And he goes, those guys are bullies, for lack of a better term. He goes, IT support, he goes, they had no chance. He goes, they would be shaking anytime there was a call. So, because especially the traders, he goes, if their keyboard broke, they needed a replacement keyboard within a minute because they would miss trades and that could make them lose money and what have you. So, because I was mentioning to him about the Australian investment firm that the CEO got phished via Zoom link, and then the criminals used his email to send emails to his staff saying transfer this much money. And when I explained it to him, he was like, well, people, maybe they're scared to challenge him. Even if they think it's a scam, it smells like a scam, who's going to have the guts to go up and say, hey, boss man, do you really want to do this? Because they might get fired or they might get chewed out in front of the whole office. So the culture and approachability is also super important.
Yep.
So those were the stories. Thank you for being with us for the stories today. We've got James with us, and let's poke the bear a bit. You spent a few years prior to here working for a smallish German startup, I believe.
Yeah, started up sometime back in, I think, the 60s. The 1860s. With Siemens. Had the pleasure of being there for about 18 years. Had the pleasure of doing a wide variety of different jobs, everything from networking to VPN connections, getting into network security, and then getting my CISSP. And then that changed my whole life. Then I met Javvad, and then I met Erich, and it's all been downhill after that. But
that was the highlight of your life, I'm sure, is meeting Javvad and I. So of course it's going to be downhill after that.
It was great. Yeah. But then spent about 5 years doing security awareness at Siemens, which was a lot of fun. Realized that's what the passion was. And then did some product security for our wind division before joining all of you fine folks at KnowBe4.
So you said the wind division, is that a lot of hot air? You were just blowing hot air across things, or how was that working for you?
Yeah, that was a lot of hot air. I had to keep those turbines spinning somehow.
Yeah, you're talking about the big windmills and stuff, though, right? The power generation stuff.
These are wind turbines that are generating they were at the time they were generating about 3 to 4 megawatts, and you would have anywhere from 20 to 100 wind turbines at a wind farm. A lot of the times you either had them offshore, onshore, out in the middle of the country. I know the UK's got a lot out here, and out in Texas, up in Canada.
Texas. Yeah, how'd those work out for Texas?
Yeah, well, the problem is they didn't winterize those turbines, and they couldn't operate. They didn't want to spend the money. Didn't want to be spent to put enough into it to make sure that it didn't freeze up. Kind of like security awareness programs. They don't put enough money into the people. Okay, sorry. There's my soapbox. But that was the unfortunate thing with those wind turbines. But it was interesting. I looked at the product security for that and making sure that they didn't get hacked. That was my one job. So did it for 3 years and then had this opportunity. So
Javvad, I think you had this brings to mind a video that you made once before. When I think about what happened in Texas during this, we had this horrible cold snap go across there, and power was shut off and all that because there were all these problems, right? But what James just said about not winterizing reminded me of the video that you made called "Accepted the Risk." Does that kind of ring for you?
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny because it's these sorts of on the surface. It's basically an accounting decision, and it's put down to well, that's never really going to happen, or the likelihood, and people underestimate the actual impact that it's going to have. And early on in my career, I was introduced to, I was getting introduced to all the teams and getting to know how they work. And there was the business continuity and disaster recovery team. And I was speaking to the gentleman who ran that. And I was like, so what, if the building catches fire, you have alternative sites for everything, you have two of everything, is that pretty much what you do? And he laughed and he goes, well, it's actually a bit more nuanced than that. Because first he gave a presentation explaining how they got 3 power supplies so 2 different power suppliers and backup generators. And then you have 3 different internet providers all coming in from different angles or different entrances into the building. Say for someone working on the street cuts through one, you still have power and internet and all those kinds of things. So I said, right, you just build redundant. And he goes, it's a bit more nuanced than that. He goes, it's even small things. He goes, say like your sewage pipe breaks on one of the floors. He goes, it's not that the building's not operational or you can't work in there, but he goes, the smell is just going to make it completely inhabitable. He goes, people won't want to be anywhere on that floor. He goes, it's the little things. He goes, the things that you don't really think about on the big scheme, because we're always thinking about these big things that will happen, an earthquake, a terrorist attack, a fire, or something like that. But he goes, often it's just these smaller things that happen, or they set off a chain of events that make that you have to factor in.
Yeah, it's like the whole pandemic. It's like, what made you guys shift to your work from home program? Was it the CEO, the CISO, or was it COVID? Yeah, and of course, everybody circles COVID because that was something they weren't expecting, and everybody had to act real quick. Yep.
So James, so you've worked in many aspects. You described some of the different roles that you've worked in. Obviously, security awareness is your passion, and as you said, what kind of role do you think that you've learned the most from in your time? What do you think has built you up more in terms of your security knowledge, which you would say, hey, this is a good place where people who are looking to build their security career could actually learn from, which isn't the traditional, let's say, pen testing, which everyone talks about?
Yeah. One of the things, the other passion is teaching, and teaching at the local college. I get to have the pleasure, the honor, again, we'll say, of educating in cybersecurity a lot of the students. Yeah, I see Eric shaking his head. Yeah, can't believe it. But it's giving back, getting the next generation, because we're not doing this forever, and security is not going anywhere and it's going away anytime soon. So with educating them and discussing with them, we're always having the conversation. Is it, better to be a pen tester, part of the red team, or work on the blue team, which is it's a lot harder because you're on defense. And when you're on defense, you're working a lot harder. There's that ever famous saying
that's going to generate some thumbs down on our stuff here.
No, blue teamers work really hard. With the folks that I got to work in the SOCs, work in the security operations centers, it's a lot of work, but it's extremely rewarding as well. Knowing that you're working to protect the organization or protect the network or whatever it may be. But for me, it's going out and doing the education and meeting people and networking and all that. It's a lot of fun. But within the InfoSec community, there's so many different roles. You can bring people in from all different aspects. Bring them in from communications. You can get them involved in doing security awareness and training. You bring somebody that's a data scientist or somebody that does analytics, and they can be working in a SOC doing those kind of analysis and log work on, coming off the networks. But it's always a fun challenge trying to, find that one role. But there's a lot of them out there. And I think with the folks coming in, networking and getting folks, I think it's more about networking and getting the right personality of somebody that's going to be working in that field, and you can teach them all the technical stuff.
Wise words from Grandpa McQuiggan.
Yeah, Professor Grandpa McQuiggan.
When you said Grandpa, I nearly turned around to look at my dad. But yeah, appreciate it.
Cool, that's very good. So, are there any? Let's do this. You're an avid reader. What can you recommend? But what's high on your recommended reading list at the moment?
Well, it's funny you should say that because I just pulled this book out this morning because I had to look some stuff up.
Oh, yeah, Perry's book. Yeah,
Perry's book. Granted, I know we work with him, but 10 years ago, I mentioned it to him this morning, but 10 years ago when I was doing security awareness and trying to get people to take the training and get, understand it and be receptive of it, I'm like, I wish I could understand the behaviors more. What does it make them tick? I wish I paid more attention to my psychology class in college. Perry's book answers a lot of those questions, which I really like. But that's high on my list of, my go-to stuff. Tribe of Hackers is another good book. Anything that Javad's written, I always enjoy reading.
He hasn't written anything.
Isn't that what you want me to say, Javad? Checking my notes.
Even when I sit on the bathroom stalls, it's like, I enjoy reading.
Although I do have to say, Javad, we may let the cat out of the bag here. You and I have been working on a book for some time now, and I think we've got about 4 or 8 paragraphs done of that at this point. It's only been 6 months, something like that.
We'll get there. We'll get
there. Coming along nicely then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Framed me. I know you're not much of a reader, Eric, but is there any books that you would recommend?
So I love Perry's book, and I'm, again, not just saying that because it's Perry, but Perry's book not only deals with security awareness, but with psychology in general. And it's also useful for marketing, understanding what makes people tick and make them think and makes them take action and kind of how we do that. I would say it's even probably pretty good when it comes to red teamers and understanding how people work. Okay. So Perry is one of the smartest guys I've ever met. I've been fortunate to spend some time with him, but he really, really gets the psychology piece of it, which to me is fascinating. It's so much deeper than just, what we initially think of when it comes to people. And it's given me a good perspective on how to manipulate people.
No, you're absolutely right. And the psychology aspect is so overlooked because we oftentimes within cybersecurity, we talk about metrics and how we're measuring things. And there are certain things that you can count are just easy to measure, but they're not always necessarily the right things to be measuring. And if you understand the psychology and what makes people tick, you can get further. A great example I heard not too long ago was we have the Eurostar, which connects London to Paris. It's a train that goes underneath the channel, and they spent about 6 million or 16 million upgrading it so they could cut the journey time by 40 minutes.
Wow.
And they looked at, and someone looked at it, and they said, well, for 10% of that, or less than 10% of the cost, you could put high-speed internet throughout the entire journey. You'd make the journey more enjoyable for people, and maybe they wouldn't mind the extra 40 minutes.
Right.
And actually, for half of that price, for a whole year, you could hire some of the world's top models to serve free champagne up and down, and people would be begging you to slow the train down. So
yeah.
This is what happens when we just look at bean counters and what we think we're measuring. It's not always the right thing, and this is where the psychology and some of Perry's tips really come in handy.
Yeah, that reminds me. Earlier, you were talking about how sometimes things look better on paper than they do in real life. And there was a great movie that was all about this. I think it really got the idea home of honestly how bad things can go, and that's it's called National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, right? So not to give away the end there, but yeah, the Jelly of the Month Club thing, and they end up getting the boss kidnapped, and he's going, yeah, well, it looked better on paper, and now that we see how it impacts people, it's a little bit different, as he's tied up. But yeah, interesting how those things kind of, the paper side looks different, and taking that holistic view can make a big difference.
It's like I find jokes sound funnier in my head than when I come out with them out loud.
That's always the case.
You don't need to agree with me.
Well, I got to tell you, for folks that are watching this in the video version, it appears that Javvad has activated his Kung Fu movie filter. And so his audio and his lip syncing are way off right now. It's humorous to watch. So if you're listening to the podcast, you may just want to see this anyways.
No, maybe I tell you what, there's this extra. If I reduce the workload here, then that should fix.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, yes. There we go. Now it looks perfect. Now you look great.
No, it is, isn't it?
It was interesting. You were talking before, and I'm going to throw this in because Eric's not on here anymore. With regards to metrics, everything that we do, and a lot of what we do in security awareness is all about cost avoidance. If we get people to not click on links, then they're not having to have their systems re-imaged, and we're saving costs on productivity. That was a lot of what I dealt with back in my Siemens days, where we were monitoring these gas turbines. We were monitoring it and basically looking to make sure that the gas turbines didn't get damaged, break down. It was a cost avoidance thing, and it was always very tricky to be able to measure that, and it was the constant battle. But a lot of it came down to having the data. If you had the data and you could show things, then that was going to prove your point and get you whatever it is you needed. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to put that in there, Javvad, and of course being here today.
No, thank you for being here. Is there any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with us? No, he doesn't want to share anything else with us. So with that, thank you so much for joining us on this week's Jerich Show. Hopefully we will be back next week, and Eric's neck will be feeling better, and maybe we'll have even another guest for you. So until then, stay secure, my friends.